medieval city of Bhaktapur, which is just outside of Kathmandu, Nepal. Before I get to the subject matter in this video, I just wanted to give a quick little scan of the scene here because it's pretty fascinating. Bhaktapur is a medieval city from as early as the 8th century, but as you can see, it is still a living city with people still living here. So you have to pay to come in here. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and there's a lot to see. I've been walking all around this area, and it is just endlessly fascinating. But I'm now going to walk over to what looks like a little bit quieter spot there to discuss the subject for this video, which is: does true happiness require having no preferences? Definitely a kind of intriguing subject matter. Just going to walk across this bridge here. So it is a philosophy of sorts that I've seen in various places, discussions and whatnot, that the way to be happy is to be a duck. Just kidding. Oh, it's okay. You can go by. There you go. Alright, pardon the cute distractions. So, the philosophy sort of goes like this, that when you have preferences for things, then you are setting yourself up to be disappointed. Let's say you go to an ice cream shop and you had this, big expectation of having strawberry ice cream, and they're out of strawberry ice cream. You have to get some other ice cream, and then you're let down and you feel disappointed, and maybe it ruins your day. Hopefully not, but you never know. Anyway, it impacts you in some way and gives you negative feelings or emotions. All right, gonna poke in here. And so some people would say that the answer then is to not care what kind of ice cream you get, and then you're not subject to those negative emotions. You don't have to deal with the disappointment, the letdown of having an expectation of having a particular ice cream flavor and discovering that it isn't there. But I will state, in my personal opinion, this philosophy is completely ludicrous. To some extent, this is coming from the fact that I just did a video on the subject of desire, and does desire cause suffering? And so this kind of stems from that if you have a desire for something in particular, and then that thing is taken away from you, or you don't get it, or whatever, then you're setting yourself up for pain and suffering. So here's the thing, is if you just walk this back a little bit, then you will see how ridiculous it is. So, first of all, why would you go into an ice cream shop whatsoever, other than that you had a desire for ice cream? Why would you eat? Why would you do anything unless you had a preference or a desire for that thing? The idea that somehow we can actually live our lives without having any preferences at all is completely ludicrous. And any spiritual principle should be able to be applied to its fullest extent, to its fullest depth. If you're going to say that ultimately the answer to happiness is to not have preferences, then you have to take that to its fullest extent, and to that fullest extent would be, I do not have preferences for pain versus pleasure. Hello. Just informed by those boys that came walking up to me that where I'm sitting is the cremation grounds for this village. They did say that it is okay if I sit here, but you can see straight ahead of me. Looks like that's where they do the cremation, so pretty fascinating. Okay, so I forget exactly where I was on this, but so if you're going to say that this is a spiritual principle, that one should have no preferences, then taking it to its fullest extent, would you prefer to be sitting around a fire or being burned alive by that fire? I realize that's an extreme example, but there are plenty of examples you can give where it is inconceivable to actually say that you could have no preferences. Do you have a preference for love or to not be in love, in a state of love? When, in my opinion, then, love is our basic state of being. So to say that you have no preferences, you don't care what happens to you, you don't care what ice cream flavor they give you, you don't care if you're being burned alive, you don't care if you're in love, this is just ridiculous. So I was thinking about this last night, and the conclusion that I came to was that this philosophy is based on a misunderstanding around the concept of detachment versus non-attachment. And I've discussed this in previous videos, and interestingly, I was watching a Teal Scott video just a few days ago, and she discussed the same concept just very briefly in the course of this other video of detachment and non-attachment. And it's a good one to sort of ponder further and come to a greater understanding of, because people can confuse the two when they are quite different. So detachment is removing yourself from a situation, not being connected to it, being detached, not being involved, not being a part of, not being mixed up in or connected to something. Non-attachment, on the other hand, is to be connected to that something, to be involved with it, to be having a relationship, an experience with something, and yet you are not attached to the outcome. You're not attached to that thing. That thing could leave you, and you wouldn't experience a lasting attachment to it. So those are two very different concepts, and people can confuse the two. And so I think that this philosophy around don't have any preferences is a matter of detaching from reality as a way to try to avoid suffering. So you could say, if you're having no preferences for anything, then that's how you avoid pain and suffering. You don't care what ice cream anyone gives you. You don't care what happens to you. The problem, of course, is that you would just starve to death, and you would have no direction in your life without any preference for being here or being there, or eating or not eating, or having children or not having children, or being alive or being dead, for that matter. But by seeking to not have preferences, then you can say, well, things aren't going to affect me anymore. It doesn't matter what happens to me, I'm not going to be affected by it. And this ultimately is a philosophy of detachment, is to say, I'm not going to be moved by the world around me. And that's going to solve my conundrum of pain and suffering, and having responses and reactions, potentially negative ones, to life and to various circumstances that arise. So think of this concept of non-attachment rather than attachment, which is to acknowledge that you do have preferences. Maybe you aren't particularly attached to ice cream flavors. We all have preferences. That's just an absolutely basic, fundamental part of life that you're not going to get around, and you can pretend and deny that, or you can be less picky about life. That certainly is a good way to cut down on some pain and suffering, is to not be so attached to various outcomes and getting this or that, or if they don't have strawberry at the ice cream shop, then you're fine with having chocolate or vanilla. But you're never going to remove that entirely. So instead of seeking to live life trying to convince yourself that you don't care what happens to you, instead, fully engage with life and acknowledge, yes, I do have preferences, I do have desires for this or that, and it is possible that I am not going to always get what I want, and that is then going to lead to disappointment and frustration and negative feelings and emotions, and that's okay. and you just face and live with those negative emotions, and you just move through them, and you acknowledge that's just, part of the deal. That's just what comes with life, is that you're not always going to get what you want, and there is going to be disappointment and difficulty and challenges, and that's okay. And just to embrace that reality, instead of trying to embrace a impossible state of being of thinking that you don't care whatsoever what happens to you. So there you go, just a few thoughts on how you're engaging with reality, and being honest with yourself and what your preferences are, and not being ashamed to have preferences and to go for them, and to have desires, and know what you want in life, and try to achieve creating that reality that you desire, despite the fact that you may not necessarily achieve it. And that's just the way it goes. So, all right, thanks for watching. Take care.